My parents put me in an orphanage when I was 4 years old because I was difficult and they had problems. However, as it turned out, my mother was already pregnant with my sister at the time. But more than 20 years later, they found me when I had become successful. They wanted to take me back and be a family, or so I thought. But it turned out that it was just an illusion. I remember the day down to the smallest detail. I was 5, clutching my red dinosaur backpack so tightly the straps dug into my palms. My parents told me we were going on an adventure. That's what my mom said. She smiled, but her eyes didn't match. My dad was quiet, staring straight ahead as we drove. No radio, no small talk, just the hum of the engine and my feet kicking the back of the seat. We pulled up to a large brick building with white-trimmed windows. There was a playground out front, empty except for one kid swinging slowly back and forth, alone. I asked if we were here to play. My dad said nothing. Inside, the building smelled like paper and cleaning fluid. The lady at the front desk smiled at me in that too big way adults do when they're about to lie. My mom crouched beside me, tucked my hair behind my ear, and whispered, "We'll be back soon. Okay? Just wait here. Be a good boy." She kissed my forehead. My dad patted my head. Then they turned around and walked out the door. I ran after them. I reached the door just as it clicked shut, hands smacking the cold glass, screaming, "Mom! Dad!" But they didn't turn back. I watched their car drive away, the red taillights getting smaller and smaller until they disappeared. I didn't understand what had happened. At that age, you don't think your parents can leave you. I sat on that same bench by the front window every morning for weeks, waiting for them. Every time a car pulled up, my heart would leap and crash when it wasn't them. I started recognizing the regular delivery van, the mail carrier. None of them brought my parents. I stopped waiting by the window after a while. Not because I stopped hoping, but because the hope hurt too much. Nights were the worst. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what I did wrong. I replayed every memory with them, trying to figure out the moment I failed them. Was it the time I spilled milk on the rug? Did I make too much noise? Was I just too much? The orphanage was functional. I wasn't abused or mistreated, but it was cold in the ways that matter. Staff rotated out constantly. You learned not to get attached. You learned that hugs were something you had to earn. If you cried too much, they labeled you difficult. If you were too quiet, you were ignored. I chose to be quiet. When I turned 7, I had already seen too many other kids come and go. I watched toddlers snatched up by smiling couples. No one wanted the older ones. Definitely not the weird quiet boy who flinched when people touched him. Then Laura and Henry showed up. They were in their mid-30s. She wore a yellow cardigan and he had laugh lines etched into his face. They came on a Saturday. I was reading in the corner, my back against the wall. The social worker tried to coax me out, but I didn't move. I didn't trust them. Henry didn't try to talk to me right away. He just sat on the floor nearby and started reading a book aloud. Not to me, just out loud. The first chapter of Charlotte's Web. I pretended not to listen, but I heard every word. They came back the next week, and the week after, until finally, I started sitting a little closer. When they asked if I wanted to come live with them, I didn't say yes. I didn't say anything, but I packed my bag. The first night in their home, I didn't sleep. I lay in the bed they gave me. A real bed, not a cot, with dinosaur sheets and a little nightlight in the shape of the moon. I stared at the ceiling, waiting for the other shoe to drop, for them to change their minds. But they didn't. They were patient, so painfully patient. Laura made me lunch every day and cut the crusts off because I once mentioned I didn't like them. Henry taught me how to ride a bike, and when I fell, he didn't get mad. He just helped me up. I still had nightmares. I still cried myself to sleep sometimes. On my 8th birthday, I locked myself in the bathroom and screamed that I didn't want to party. I thought parties meant goodbye. I thought if I let them get too close, they'd leave too. But they stayed. Even when I broke down. Even when I pushed them away. They took me to therapy. A kind woman with kind eyes helped me find words for the things I didn't know how to say. Slowly, the ice cracked. Slowly, I began to trust. Laura and Henry became mom and dad. Laura and Henry always told me I was smart. Not just in a pat-on-the-head kind of way, but like they actually believed it. School became my safe zone. Math just made sense to me. It fit together in my mind like snapping Lego bricks. I tore through books like I couldn't get enough. I started winning awards, honor rolls, academic competitions. And they were always there, front row, cheering like I was taking home Olympic gold. The day I found out I got a full scholarship to one of the top universities in the country, I called Laura first. She was so overwhelmed she dropped the phone mid-sob. That moment sticks with me more than the acceptance letter. College was a whirlwind. Late nights, impossible deadlines, constant pressure. But for the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere. I kept my past mostly to myself. Around the firm where I interned, people thought my story was interesting. A quirky little side note I preferred not to get into. I didn't want pity. I wanted respect. After I graduated, I landed a position at a big-name consulting firm. One of those places where the elevators don't even work unless you've got a keycard. I started at the bottom like everyone else, but I didn't stay there. Work took over my life. Slowly, without realizing it, I went from just another guy in a suit to the guy. At 31, I was named CEO of Deltarise Analytics, the very same company where I once sat at a desk, scared out of my mind during my internship. My story made waves. One of those glossy business magazines ran a piece on me, From Orphan to Executive, The Unlikely Rise of Ethan Brooks. The headline was dramatic, sure, but it hit the truth. They called me a symbol of perseverance. A kid abandoned at 5, raised by people who chose me. Now a young CEO, opening up Deltarise's brand new Chicago office. I gave interviews. I talked about Laura and Henry, about the value of routine, discipline, and having someone show up for you. I didn't name my biological parents, but I didn't hide what happened either. I was left at an orphanage when I was 5, I said on camera, and I waited every day for people who never came back. The article went viral. I was in my office the morning of the Chicago launch, still sipping my first coffee, when Jenna, my assistant, buzzed in. "Mr. Brooks," she said, "there's a couple downstairs. No appointment. They say it's personal." I almost told her to turn them away, until she added, "They say their names are Monica and Frank Davis." I stopped breathing for a second. Did they say what they wanted? "No, sir. Just that it's urgent." That name, I hadn't heard it in decades, cleared my throat. "Put them in conference room B. I'll be there in a few." The walk down that hallway felt like dragging weights behind me. When I opened the door, they were already seated. Monica looked older, thinner, worn down in a way that went beyond age. Frank sat stiffly, like he was bracing for something. His hands were folded neatly in front of him, like a kid waiting to be called on in class. "Ethan," she said, voice shaking. I didn't sit. I didn't answer right away either. "You read the article," I said finally, keeping my voice flat. She nodded. "We saw your photo, the part about the orphanage. We knew it was you right away. So you just came here? After all these years?" Frank tried for a smile. It didn't land. "We thought maybe you'd want to see us. We didn't know how else to reach you." The air felt too thick, like the whole room was slightly tilted. "Why now?" I asked. "Because I made it? Because my name's in the press and I'm on magazine covers? You had your shot, my whole childhood. I sat by a window every single morning, hoping you'd come back. And now here you are, standing in my office like it's nothing." Monica opened her purse and pulled out a photo. She slid it across the table toward me. It was me, 5 years old, grinning too big for my face. "We kept this," she said quietly. "We never stopped thinking about you." I stared at the photo for a long second. My chest tightened. My throat burned. Then I turned it over, face down. "That boy didn't know what was coming," I said. "But I do." And then I walked out. I didn't show up at the office the next day. Before the sun even came up, I texted Jenna, "Feeling under the weather. Taking a couple days. Please cancel my meetings." She replied almost immediately, "Of course. Let me know if you need anything. Feel better soon. I flipped my phone face down and left it untouched for hours. My apartment felt like a tomb. Quiet, dim, and too still. I didn't bother opening the blinds. Left the lights off. I just drifted. I paced around the place aimlessly. Sat on the edge of the couch. Lay down. Got up 10 minutes later. My body was dead tired, but my mind wouldn't shut up. Monica and Frank. Their faces. That photograph. The way they said my name like it still belonged to them. Like it hadn't been over 20 years since I'd heard it from either of their mouths. Should I have stayed longer? Should I have given them the chance to explain? Was I too cold? The questions circled like vultures. No answers, just that slow, dizzy loop of doubt that wouldn't break. I made coffee and forgot to drink it. Stared out the window for what felt like hours without really seeing anything. Tried to read, but the words on the page just bled together. So instead, I remembered the orphanage. The pale yellow paint peeling in corners. The sharp, lingering smell of bleach and cheap cafeteria food. The staff member who jingled everywhere she went because of the keys clipped to her belt. And how she always called me sweetheart in this robotic, automatic voice. I remembered the bench by the front window. My spot, where I sat each morning hoping, just hoping, that today would be different. That today they'd come back. That I wasn't just another name on a list no one looked at twice. I remembered watching the lucky kids leave. The way their new parents knelt down to hug them. Crying and smiling like their hearts had just been handed back to them. I always smiled for them too. Even though inside, I felt like wallpaper. And I remembered Laura and Henry. The warmth in their presence. Their gentle clumsiness with love, how they tried, even when I pushed back. The night I lost it, screamed myself hoarse, and Laura just sat beside my bed, running her fingers through my hair until I finally passed out from exhaustion. Now here I was, the CEO of a major company, a man with a corner office, a name on the door, and staff who answered my calls before the second ring. But that little boy, the one with the dinosaur backpack and too many questions, he was still there, buried underneath the suits and headlines, still wondering what he did wrong. I barely ate. The fridge stayed sealed. I think I drank water now and then, more out of habit than hunger. I drifted between the couch and the bed like a ghost just haunting my own home. On the second day, I stood in the shower until the water turned ice cold and still didn't move. Their faces stayed with me, the fatigue in their eyes, the way they looked at me like they were holding something fragile. What if they were being honest? What if they really did think about me all those years? What if they regretted everything? Was it so hard to believe they'd suffered too? But then I thought about all the birthdays I spent staring at the ceiling in a silent room. About the parent-teacher conferences where Laura and Henry proudly introduced themselves while I quietly watched other kids hug their moms like it was the most natural thing in the world. I thought about how Monica pushed that photo across the table like it was her big proof. Like it was supposed to fix everything. Like one old photo was going to erase years of being forgotten. Then came the knock. It made me jump. I wasn't expecting anyone. First, I didn't even move. Then I walked over and checked the peephole. No one. Just an envelope on the floor. Plain white. No name. No return address. Inside was a handwritten letter. Ethan, we didn't want to scare you. We didn't know how you'd react. Maybe this was selfish. Maybe we were just hoping for a miracle. We read your story. We saw everything you've accomplished. We're proud of you, truly. But more than anything, we are sorry. For all of it. If you ever want to talk, no pressure, no expectations, we'll be here. RNT. I read it once. Then again. Then a third time. After that, I folded it and tucked it into the back of my desk drawer. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything or fall apart. I just sat there, still, asking myself the question I didn't know how to answer. How do you forgive someone who walked away? That night, I did the only thing that made sense. I called the woman who never once let me down. Laura picked up on the second ring. Sweetheart, is everything all right? I hesitated. My voice felt tight, like something was stuck in my throat. I need your advice. She didn't push, just stayed quiet on the other end. giving me room to breathe. They showed up, I said finally. Monica and Frank, my biological parents. They saw the article and tracked me down. There was a pause, followed by a quiet, "I see." I walked out, I admitted. Didn't really let them speak. But now it's all I can think about. I keep wondering if I was too cold. If maybe I should have heard them out. She let out a soft breath. Ethan, only you can decide what peace looks like for you. If listening to them helps you move forward, then listen. But if keeping your distance is what keeps you steady, then that's okay too. You have to follow your heart. I sighed. What if I can't hear what my heart's saying? Then be still, listen harder, and give yourself grace. You've carried a lot for a long time. It's okay not to have it all figured out. We talked for a while after that. She didn't tell me what to do. She never did. But something about her voice, her calm, always brought me back to center. Made the world feel a little less chaotic. I didn't sleep that night. I tossed and turned for hours, my brain flipping between old memories and the conversations I hadn't had yet. By the time the sun rose, I knew what I needed to do. I opened the drawer and pulled out the letter again. Read it once, then flipped it over to find the number Monica had scribbled on the back. I dialed. She picked up after 2 rings, sounding breathless. "Ethan, I'd like to meet," I said. "Somewhere public." "Of course," she replied quickly. "Anywhere you're comfortable." We agreed on a quiet little cafe downtown. I got there early and chose a table in the far corner. I tried to keep still, but my knee kept bouncing under the table. The anticipation made my chest feel tight, like my emotions were rubbing up against each other and sparking. When they walked in, it hit me again, that strange mix of familiarity and complete distance, like seeing a childhood dream walk through the door, but knowing it wasn't real. They sat across from me. No greetings, no handshakes, just a heavy, loaded silence. Monica held a small envelope in both hands. Frank didn't look up, just kept his eyes fixed on the tabletop. The silence stretched on. None of us knew how to start. Felt thick, like we were wading through fog. Eventually, Monica reached across the table and slid the envelope toward me. "These are for you," she said, barely above a whisper. I opened it. Inside were old photographs, faded, worn at the edges. One was of me dressed as Batman, probably 5 years old, cape crooked, smiling like I had no idea what was coming. Another showed me asleep on a couch, mouth hanging open. And one was a candid shot, me and Frank at a park, blurry but unmistakable. "We didn't have many," Monica said softly, "but we kept what we could." I didn't know how to respond. I just looked at the photos, trying to see, really see, if there was any trace of the love I'd spent so long wishing for. Frank cleared his throat. "Things haven't been easy for us. After we left you, everything kind of fell apart. Work came and went. I've been in and out of hospitals for years. Lung issues mostly. Never got ahead of it. I've only been able to manage part-time work," Monica added. "Sometimes cleaning, sometimes retail. But it's never stable. Rent's always late. We don't have anyone else to lean on." They just sat there, looking at me, waiting, hoping, leaning hard on whatever shred of compassion I might still have left. I didn't say anything right away, just gave a slow nod, feeling the weight of everything they weren't saying, and the sting of everything they still hadn't said. They never told me why. Not once did they mention the choice. Not yet, anyway. I folded the photos carefully and tucked them back into the envelope. "Thanks," I said. That was it. No questions. No warmth. Just that. But the question itself, it was still there, sitting heavy in my chest like a rock. It had been there for years, buried beneath therapy sessions, beneath progress, beneath the mask I wore when people called me inspiring. I'd gone over it in my head 1,000 times, out loud in empty rooms, in front of mirrors. Why? Why did you leave me? I spent the next morning staring at my phone, debating whether to call them. But deep down, I knew this wasn't something to ask through a screen. I needed to look them in the eye when they answered. I had to see their faces when they told me the truth. We met at the same cafe. I didn't bring anything this time. No distractions. No rehearsed lines. Just me and the question that had haunted me since I was 5. They showed up 5 minutes late. Frank looked rough, paler than before, moving slower. Monica was trembling slightly as she held her coffee cup. I didn't bother easing into it. "I need to ask you something," I said, staring straight at them. Their eyes snapped to mine, wide and wary. "Why did you do it?" My voice cracked, but I didn't care. "Why did you leave me there? What made you think I wasn't worth keeping?" Monica dropped her gaze to the table. Frank rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding eye contact. Neither of them spoke for what felt like forever. Finally, Monica spoke, barely a whisper. "I was pregnant." I blinked. "What?" "When we left you at the orphanage," she said, her voice shaking. "I had just found out I was pregnant with your sister. We were broke, struggling. Everything felt like it was falling apart. We panicked. We thought we couldn't handle 2 kids." She still wouldn't look at me. Frank turned his head like he couldn't bear to be in the conversation anymore. "So you picked her," I said. Monica flinched like I'd slapped her. "You chose her instead of me. You found out you were having another baby and decided I was the one you could get rid of." Tears filled her eyes. "It wasn't that simple, wasn't it?" I snapped, my voice sharper than I intended, but I didn't stop. "You replaced me before she was even born." The whole cafe felt like it went still. Nobody interrupted. Nobody looked our way. But I could feel the silence stretching tight around us. Frank finally spoke, voice low and raspy. "We didn't have steady jobs. We were behind on rent. We barely had enough to eat. We thought the orphanage was just going to be temporary. We planned to come back for you." "But you didn't," I said, deadpan. "We didn't know how," Monica said, almost pleading. "And the more time passed, the more we convinced ourselves that it was the right thing, that you'd be better off." I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding hard in my ears. They hadn't just left me. They'd made a choice, a calculated decision. One life over another. Mine hadn't made the cut. That pain, it hit deeper than anything else ever had. Worse than the day they left. Worse than every birthday they missed. Worse than every silent holiday I spent wondering if they even remembered my name. They didn't lose me. They gave me up. I looked at them, really looked, and saw 2 strangers. Not family. Not anymore. "You came here looking for sympathy," I said, voice low and even. "But all I feel is rage. Not because you left, but because you never looked back." Monica was crying now, shoulders shaking. Frank looked stunned, like he'd just been punched and didn't know how to breathe. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive you," I said, quieter now. "But I needed to know the truth." I stood up. The envelope with those old photos was still in my coat pocket, heavy against my side. I didn't say goodbye. 2 weeks went by. No calls. No texts. No unexpected visits. Just silence. I started to think that maybe that was it, that they'd said their piece and faded out again. Vanished, this time for good. I couldn't decide if that thought brought me relief or just another kind of emptiness. Then one evening, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Monica. "Ethan, I'm sorry to reach out like this. I know things have been difficult, but your father's in the hospital. Serious. We can't afford the treatment." We didn't know who else to ask. I read it once, then again, and again. This was the first time they'd ever asked me for anything. I don't know what made me respond. Maybe it was the word hospital. Maybe it was guilt. Or maybe, deep down, I still carried some tiny thread of obligation. Not as their son, exactly, but maybe just as a person who couldn't ignore suffering, even if it came from people who'd caused his own. I typed out a short reply, "What hospital?" She answered right away. I wired the money quietly, without asking for details, then grabbed my coat and headed across town. The hospital wasn't impressive. It was this tired-looking building tucked behind a forgotten strip mall. Gray brick, flickering lights in the parking lot. Inside, it was all sterile whites and scuffed floors, the air thick with disinfectant and old plastic chairs. At the front desk, I asked for Frank Davis. The nurse barely looked up as she pointed me toward room 314. The walk down the hallway felt longer than it should have. Every step echoed. Every corner made me hesitate. Just before the room, a woman was standing alone in the hallway. She was on the phone, cradling a tablet in one arm, her other hand making slight gestures as she spoke. Something about her stopped me. There was a resemblance. The same sharp cheekbones, the same serious eyebrows. But everything else about her screamed control and confidence. She wore a long coat that probably cost more than most people's rent, heels that clicked with purpose, and her dark hair was pulled back in a perfect twist. Her makeup was flawless, professional. Not a single detail out of place. She ended her call just as I approached. Our eyes met. "Hi," she said almost offhandedly. "You here to see Frank?" "Yes," I said slowly. "I'm Ethan." She blinked once. "Oh." There was a beat of silence between us. She didn't extend her hand, didn't smile. "I'm Chloe," she said, just like that. Her voice was smooth, polite, but distant. Every word felt weighed and filtered. She glanced at her phone again. "I'm late to a meeting about Dad's discharge paperwork. He's stable for now, but it's a lot." She gave me a quick nod. Not rude, not warm, just efficient. And then she turned and walked away. No curiosity, no questions, no spark of recognition that we shared blood or childhood ghosts. Just business. I watched her go, the tap of her heels fading like a metronome disappearing down the hallway. Then I opened the door to room 314. Frank was asleep, machines beeping quietly around him. He looked smaller somehow, sunken into the bed. I took a seat in the corner and sat quietly, the space between us filled with sterile air and old pain. And whatever I'd imagined about meeting my sister, whatever hope I dared to hang on to about what that moment might feel like, it wasn't this. I stayed in that hospital room for maybe 10 minutes. Frank never woke up, and I didn't try to wake him. Honestly, the whole thing felt surreal, distant, like I was watching someone else's life from the sidelines. I sat there, but I wasn't thinking about him. I was thinking about Chloe, about how calm she'd been, how little she reacted, how fast she walked away. When I stood up to leave, I didn't glance back. I drove straight to the office. It was late, the place mostly dark except for the soft glow of exit signs and my own office light. I sat at my desk anyway, flipping through reports I didn't need to read. Numbers helped. They were honest. They didn't manipulate, didn't guilt you, didn't ask for anything they weren't owed. Over the next few days, Monica started reaching out more. Her messages weren't emotional, they were practical, straightforward. They needed help paying the electric bill. Then it was the water bill, a gas fill-up for the car. The same car, she said, that Frank would need for future appointments. Next came the car itself. The transmission, apparently, some new repair, another estimate, another quiet ask. And I sent the money, every time. No lectures, no questions, no judgment. Turned into a pattern. She'd ask. I'd send. Repeat. I told myself it was kindness, that this was what family did, that maybe, just maybe, something was slowly stitching itself back together. Every so often, she'd say thanks. Sometimes she'd just write, "We're so proud of you," and I let myself believe it. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into work, stayed late, buried my thoughts beneath spreadsheets and project deadlines. Meanwhile, Monica and Frank kept messaging. Light stuff, small talk. They wanted to meet again, this time at their apartment. I was caught off guard. Felt like something, like they were building toward more. Part of me wondered if they remembered. My birthday was in 2 days, and I let myself imagine, just for a moment, that maybe they did. That maybe Monica had remembered how that little boy, all those years ago, had clung to hope like a lifeline on his birthday. Maybe she was trying to do something now, something small to show she cared. I said yes. Maybe I'd been too hard on them. Maybe there was something worth rebuilding here. Their apartment was modest, worn, cluttered, but lived in. Monica had made coffee. Frank looked better, more relaxed. There was a softness to him I hadn't seen before. Family photos lined the mantel. Chloe was in almost every single one. A young girl with braces and a wide grin. A confident woman in a graduation gown. One picture showed her holding hands with a guy who looked like a linebacker. Probably her fiancé. They seemed proud. Monica and Frank passed the pictures to me, smiling. They told me Chloe had just gotten engaged. The wedding was in a month. They talked about the venue, the dress, the flowers, how beautiful it was all going to be. I nodded, smiled where I was supposed to. But inside, it felt like I was watching someone else's home movie. Some happy family story I had no part in. Like I was just a visitor. A stranger politely sitting on the sidelines. Then Frank cleared his throat. Listen, Ethan. He used the name like we were close. We hate to even bring it up. But, well, things have been tight lately. The wedding's costing more than we planned. And we were wondering if maybe you could help. Just a little. You're doing really well, right? I froze. I looked at them. You want me to pay for the wedding? Yes, but... Monica jumped in before I could say anything. Not the whole thing. Just a little. Chloe really deserves something nice. She's such a good girl. And just like that, I was 5 again, staring at that orphanage door as it closed behind my parents. I didn't respond right away. I just gave a slow nod. The words caught somewhere in my chest. I'll think about it, I said quietly. They hadn't invited me over to reconnect. Not to celebrate my birthday. Not even to acknowledge it. They called me because they needed help. They hugged me on the way out. I stood stiff, arms by my sides. I didn't hug back. But later that night, I transferred them $15,000. Why? I've asked myself that more times than I can count. Maybe because, deep down, some part of me still wanted to belong. Still wanted to believe they meant it when they said they were proud. When they said they missed me. Over the next few weeks, the calls kept coming. Monica would ring just to check in, to make small talk. Other times, she'd slip in another request. A utility bill, medication, rent, always something. And me? Like a fool, I kept sending the money. Then, 2 days later, I got an email. From Chloe. I know things are weird. I don't know the whole story, but I'd really like to meet sometime. Just the two of us. No parents. Just the two of us. That line stuck in my head. I sat with it for days, unsure how to respond. I talked to Laura. She didn't give me advice, not directly. She never did. But she listened, really listened. And when I was done, she reminded me of something simple. You don't have to buy love, Ethan. You're worthy of it already. Eventually, I said yes. We picked a little cafe downtown, neutral ground. I showed up early and grabbed a seat in the back corner, far from the windows. I wanted a full view of the entrance. I didn't know what to expect, and I didn't want surprises. She arrived right on time. Tall, dark brown hair, eyes that looked familiar, unsettlingly familiar. Ethan? Yeah. Hey. She slid into the seat across from me and ordered a tea. I didn't order anything. Just sat with my hands folded and my back straight, like I was bracing for something. Thank you for coming, she said. I wasn't sure if you would. I wasn't sure either. She looked nervous. That surprised me. I expected confidence. Maybe even a little arrogance. But she looked like someone tiptoeing through a minefield. I didn't know you existed until I was 15, she said. They never mentioned you. Not once. Then one day I found this box in the attic. Old papers. That's how I found out. I leaned in slightly. What kind of papers? An orphanage intake form. A few old letters. A photo. Of you. That stopped me. I didn't remember them ever taking pictures of me. I confronted them, she said. That's when they told me that you were their first. That they gave you up because things were hard, and they couldn't handle both. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what I was feeling. Anger. Sadness. Some strange blend of both. I asked why they never told me, she continued. Mom said she didn't want me to feel guilty. Dad said, he said it was just easier not to talk about it. That last line hit harder than I expected. She looked down at her cup, steam curling into the air between us. I didn't ask you here to make anything worse, she said. I wanted to see you again. You're my brother. That word. Brother. "What's it like?" she asked. "Being adopted, I mean." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "Like being pulled from a burning house someone else lit on fire." She flinched. I saw it, but I didn't take it back. We ended up talking for another hour. Mostly small stuff, safe ground. Work, hobbies, the usual. She told me she was studying interior design. Engaged to a guy named Jason. "You seem like you turned out all right," she said with a soft smile. "Actually, more than all right." That's when she asked. I was wondering. Our parents and I, it's hard living together. The apartment's small, cramped. Not great for anyone. I was hoping maybe you could help with the mortgage? Just a little? We really need more space. I stared at her, unsure how to react, but she looked sincere, and before I could stop myself, I nodded. I promised myself I'd help her. I thought, she's not the one who abandoned me. Took a while. I said half to her, half to myself. When we said goodbye, she leaned in for a hug. I didn't exactly return it, but I didn't pull away either. That was something, I guess. Later that night, I replayed the whole conversation in my head, over and over. Maybe she really did want a relationship. Maybe this wasn't another setup. A few days passed. The mortgage paperwork was finalized. I handled everything quietly behind the scenes. It was meant to be a surprise, a wedding day gift for my sister. A fresh start. I wanted her to know I meant it. The next morning, I got an email from Monica. "We heard you met with Chloe. That really means the world to us. Family is everything. You'll see that in time." Felt rehearsed, like a line from a play they'd performed before. Then, on a random Friday evening, my phone buzzed. A text from a cousin I barely even talked to. "Hey, are you coming to Chloe's wedding tomorrow?" I stared at the screen. Frankero. I hadn't received an invitation. No call. No save the date. Nothing. I replied, "Was I invited?" The response came fast. "Oh, I thought you knew. They said you couldn't make it." That line landed like ice water to the chest. I didn't get mad right away. I just went numb, cold, like the world around me had dropped into grayscale. I stayed up all night, didn't sleep, didn't even try, just lay there, staring at the ceiling while the blue glow of my phone lit the room. I kept refreshing my inbox, my texts, hoping something would come through. A last-minute message, an apology, a mistake maybe, nothing. By morning, I got dressed anyway, put on a suit, shined my shoes. It was pathetic, but some piece of me, some dumb, hopeful fragment thought maybe if I looked ready, they'd call. Maybe they'd tell me they'd saved a seat. By 10 a.m., I knew. There was no seat. They had lied. Told people I couldn't make it. That I had something else going on. Something more important than showing up for my sister's wedding. I stood in front of the mirror in that suit, looking like a man dressed for a party he wasn't invited to. A ghost in someone else's celebration. Later that day, I took a long walk through the park. I saw wedding photos being taken near the water. A little girl tossing breadcrumbs to ducks, laughing as they waddled after them. A couple kissed under a tree, totally wrapped up in each other. The world moved forward. People lived, loved, celebrated. And I just stood there, still, quiet. Back home, I pulled out a bottle of wine I'd been saving for something meaningful, something worth marking. I didn't even grab a glass. Drank straight from the bottle. Tasted bitter, sharp, like disappointment. Laura called. I let it go to voicemail. A few hours later, my phone buzzed. A picture from my cousin. Chloe, in her wedding dress, smiling like she'd just stepped off a magazine cover. My birth parents stood beside her, beaming like they'd won something. The caption read, "Such a beautiful day. We missed you." Missed me? You didn't even invite me. The anger came fast and sharp, like a punch I didn't see coming. All those years I'd spent wondering what I did wrong. Every therapy session, every sleepless night, every nightmare that started with a door closing. And now, after everything, they wanted my money but not my presence. I called Laura back. She picked up on the second ring. "Ethan, are you all right?" "They didn't invite me." She went quiet for a moment. Then, I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I paid for that wedding, I said. $15,000. And I didn't even get a fucking seat. Laura didn't correct me, didn't tell me to calm down. She just listened. They lied, I said, my voice shaking. They told people I couldn't make it. Do you even know how that feels? Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. Yes, more than you know. And that's when I broke. Not because I missed them, but because I missed the lie I'd been telling myself. That maybe, just maybe, there was still something real between us. That maybe I wasn't just a paycheck in their eyes. That maybe I hadn't been left behind. I'd just been lost, waiting to be found. But there was nothing to find. That night I didn't sleep. Again, I sat at my desk and wrote. Pages and pages. Everything I wanted to say to them. Everything I never got to scream when I was 5. Most of it would never be sent. That wasn't the point. I wasn't writing for them. I was writing for me. The next morning, I blocked every number they had. My birth mom, my birth dad, even Chloe. And then I waited. Because I knew silence wasn't something they could sit with for long. It didn't take long. 2 days later, an email from Monica landed in my inbox. Ethan, we didn't mean to hurt you. You're misunderstanding things. The wedding was small, just family and close friends. We were trying to be considerate. I didn't reply. That evening, Frank called me from a different number. I let it ring. He left a voicemail. Hey son, I don't know what this is about. You've been distant. Your mother's upset. We need to talk. Your mother? You mean Laura, the woman who actually raised me. The woman who kissed my forehead and sat by my bed through night terrors. The only one who ever called me hers and meant it. The calls kept coming. First they were gentle, then pushy, then came the guilt. How can you do this to us? We're your family. We've had a hard life. We're struggling. You're doing so well. Why won't you help? Help. That was the word it always came back to. Not love. Not forgiveness. Not even understanding. Just help. They didn't want a son. They wanted a solution. That word, family, used to mean something. It meant bedtime stories and pancakes on Saturday mornings. It meant Laura's gentle voice and Henry dancing like a fool to 80s music in the kitchen. It meant safe. It meant home. Now, sounded like a chain. Like something they wanted to wrap around my throat and pull tight. Even after I blocked their numbers, the silence didn't last. Emails started flooding in. 2 or 3 a day, sometimes more. Most from Monica. Long, winding paragraphs filled with guilt trips, selective memories, and questions designed to hurt. Don't you remember the park? You loved the swings. We were just doing the best we could. The orphanage was supposed to be temporary. We never stopped thinking about you. I didn't answer any of them, but I read every word. And I hated that I did. Hated that some tiny part of me still wanted their version of the story to be true. That part of me, the kid who waited by the window, he was still in there, still looking for a reason. When I was 12, I used to keep track of every single dollar Laura gave me. Lunch money, chore cash, even spare change I found on the sidewalk. I'd make color-coded spreadsheets, graphs, pie charts. It made me feel like I had control over something, like I could keep my life from slipping away again. Back then, it was about money. Now, it was about worth. That old habit came back like muscle memory. I opened a fresh spreadsheet and titled it Transactions. Line by line, I recorded every dollar I'd sent to Monica and Frank. $1,700, February medical emergency. $600, March groceries. $16,000, April wedding support. $500, May car repair. Over 5 months, I'd given them more than 20 grand. And I hadn't even been invited to the wedding I helped pay for. I stared at the numbers until they blurred into each other. All I could feel was hollow. Used. Like they weren't rebuilding their lives with me. But on me. Not because I was their son. Just because I had a wallet. That night I called Laura. I feel like an idiot, I said. You're not, she told me gently. You just hoped. That's not foolish. Henry joined us on the line a few minutes later. He didn't press. Just asked how I'd been sleeping. what I had for dinner, how work was going. The small things, but the real things. Before we hung up, Laura said something that stuck. Just because someone shares your blood doesn't mean they deserve your heart. A week later, I got a certified letter in the mail, handwritten, from them. Inside wasn't an apology. It was a list. You wouldn't be who you are without us. We gave you life. You were difficult. We didn't have a choice. I read it 3 times. Then I fed it through the shredder. Later that night, I opened the spreadsheet one last time and added a final entry. $0. 00 June dignity. Then I saved the file and closed it. I didn't expect peace to follow. I wasn't naive, but I thought maybe I'd get a little silence. I didn't. Instead, the noise just changed shape. Calls came in from numbers I didn't recognize. Emails showed up from new addresses. Then came the messages from extended relatives. People I hadn't heard from in years, now suddenly invested in my life. They all said the same thing. They're your parents. One even had the nerve to write, "Family is forever." That line never sat right with me. If family was forever, where were they when I was 5? Sitting on a stiff mattress in a strange place, waiting for a door to open that never did? My days fell into a rhythm of ignoring. Ignoring the calls. Ignoring the guilt. Ignoring the echo of shame that crept in even when I thought I'd buried it. Work became my shelter. Deadlines. Meetings. Projects I could control. I volunteered for more. Stayed late. Picked up weekends. Anything to drown out the noise inside. One Saturday afternoon, I ran into Nicole, an old friend from college, at a coffee shop. We hadn't talked in years, but she hugged me like no time had passed. We caught up over lattes, trading the usual polite life updates, the kind people give when the closeness is gone but the care remains. Then she asked it, "So, how are your folks?" It hit me like a punch to the ribs. I lied, said everything was fine. She smiled and reached across the table. "You always had the best parents. Laura and Henry, they were like sitcom parents. I still remember your mom bringing cookies during finals." I smiled too, but my stomach turned. I left early, told her I had work. I didn't. That night, I went digging through an old drawer until I found the photo album Laura made me for graduation. I flipped through each page slowly: birthdays, school plays, art projects, field trips. Every picture had a handwritten note in the margin. "You loved this book. Wouldn't stop talking about frogs this year. We were so proud of you." Each page reminded me what love actually looks like. Not empty words, not guilt, but presence, effort, consistency. The next morning, I sat down and wrote a long email to Laura and Henry. I didn't mention Monica or Frank. I didn't need to. I just told them thank you. I told them how their patience shaped me, how I was still learning to trust, but that they were the ones who taught me how to begin. Laura replied with a heart emoji and 4 paragraphs that made me cry like I was a kid again. Henry called later that evening. "Thanks, kid," he said. "That meant more than you know." And that was the moment it clicked. Really clicked. Family isn't just blood. It's who shows up, who stays, who holds space for you, even when you're angry, or broken, or healing. Family is the people who love you not because of what you give, but simply because you exist.